Hi everybody, my name is Liz McMahon. This is my Engage activity, which is based on geography discipline, and it is looking at the Victorian curriculum statement, which is connections of people in Australia to other places in Australia and across the world. It is aimed for early childhood, foundation to grade 2 level. The experience is designed to raise the children's awareness of where our food and everyday items come from, so they can start to look for where the places are on the world map in respect to Australia. This is our home map that has been created and designed by my husband, and he has basically created the outline of the world, continents and countries. And one of the things that would be really fun for the children to do would be to find pictures and symbols, anything that they can relate to parts of the world, which is what we've done, and then paste these pictures in the country which it symbolises. So it creates like a mosaic or a mural of pictures and icons from the different parts of the world. So the Australian map here in the middle is completely made up of pictures like of Australian animals such as koalas, dingo, kangaroos, and then pictures of the outback, the Opera House, Sydney Harbour Bridge, and obviously in their respective places. This is something that could be done as a follow-up to this Engage activity for the children once they start to connect with the things that they relate to the different countries of the world. But for this activity, we are looking at helping children to identify places and realise how we're connected through trade and our everyday needs by looking at things such as rice and working out where rice is grown, and they will then learn how we rely on different locations or countries in the world to produce foods or other items that we take for granted. It will be an introduction to the differences and similarities between these places, their people, and also our culture and society. It will also raise questions about climate and landscape, reflecting on where certain foods can be grown or produced and why. We can also look at items such as clothing, footwear, and objects that the children have at home, such as toys and devices. So this experience is set up in the classroom during group time on the mat, and the teacher will show them the map of the world and ask, what country do we live in? So the children should be able to say, hey, we live in Australia, and they can point out Australia on the map. After identifying Australia on the world map and pointing out our location in Victoria, we explain to the children that, hey, yeah, look, Australia's pretty big, but we still rely on the other countries of the world for some of our foods, our clothing, shoes, accessories, devices, and other resources. We don't make them all in Australia. We get them from other countries. So then we ask some questions like, well, where do you think rice comes from? And the children might put their hand up and say, oh, well, I think it might come from China. So we will write that child's name down and put their prediction on a post-it note. So we would use purple for prediction, and then we would stick it up on the wall and say, okay, so Jane says that rice is grown in China. So the post-it note would go up here where China is, to show that that's where she predicts that rice is from. And we could do that with other items such as tea or chocolate, and record it on the board. Okay. So then we would look at the foods and items that I've brought into the classroom, and they would be spread out, and the children would be instructed to work in pairs, and that they would need to rotate around the room and look at all the different types of foods so that they can then predict where it might come from. And once they've recorded their prediction, they can then look at the packaging and confirm where it actually does come from, and record that on the sheet. Once they've looked at all their different items, they can then return to the mat, and we would have a group discussion and discuss our findings. So the worksheet would have the list of items that they should find around the classroom, and then the middle column would have where they think those things are made or where they come from, and then the last column would be what they actually have confirmed, where they've confirmed that they actually have come from. So they would keep that as a record, and then we would discuss the findings, and as we go through the list of things, we would then write down on post-it notes what we've discovered about those things. So first of all, the sorts of things that I think would interest the children would be foods such as rice, because it's part of our diet, almost our everyday diet. So I've thought we'll have some sushi rice and some basmati rice and see what the children find. Then we've got our nice 2-minute noodles that most people would have in their household and that children would probably relate to. And of course, good old Nutella and Vegemite are a popular choice. The children would be happy to work out where they're from. Okay, now the other things would be things like tea, which we've discussed, and tuna, canned corn. Okay, and we've got these crispy chips and corn chips, so they come from different places, and they're things that children love eating. And then, of course, from their own personal interests or things that they might find in their home or in their bedroom, things like sharing football. That would be of interest to some of the children, seeing as it's one of Australia's favourite sports. And then you've got the personal items like their headphones, drink bottle, there's the pencil cases, and even just highlighters and the mechanical pencils that people use, and candles. So there's lots of things that you could introduce or speak to the children about. So what would happen then is we would get our post-it notes, and we've got our predictions on the wall. So then we would say, okay, so a Sharpie highlighter we've discovered was actually made in the USA. So then we would put that down on the map. And the Pilot pencil, that mechanical pencil, was made in Japan. Okay. And our favourite Nutella. Well, Australia's actually starting to make Nutella. And sushi rice, well, surprisingly, sushi rice is being grown in Australia. The basmati rice comes from India. Okay, now here's something interesting that the children might even think is quite surprising. That mini Sharon football is actually made in India. Then, pencil case made in China. Crispy chips are made in the UK. And the green tea comes from China. Lipton tea is packaged in the Emirates. And vanilla tea comes from Mauritius. So there is an example of the different places where some of our things that we have in our cupboards at home or in our rooms or in our pencil cases, where they come from. And then the children start to visualise that, wow, you know, that packet of chips came all the way from the United Kingdom. And, you know, tea can be grown in different countries, and so can rice. So rice is being grown in Australia, not just in China, but also in India, and things like that. So they start to realise where all these things are coming from that we use every day. Okay, and then once we've identified these, we can discuss similarities or differences between the products and their origins. This could be about culture, landscape, global position, close to the equator or away from the equator, climate, which may explain how similar products can be produced in different countries, and how some products may only be introduced in a limited area or region of the world. The children can be asked to name household items, and we can list those down so that they can then go home and investigate some more, and they can report back on the next geography lesson. But while in the classroom, the discussion can also lead to children's connections to parts of the world. So their own personal connections, whether it would be through family, where their family is from, whether it's from travel, or their own personal belongings. And this brings in cultural awareness and awareness of the diversity of culture in people living in Australia and within our classroom. We can then use different coloured post-it notes to write children's names from the classroom, and then their global connection and place. We can place the note on the world map. So then the children within the classroom start to identify their own connections with others, and they can see connections that they may share or that they may not have been familiar with. So this activity broadens their knowledge and gives them the opportunity to share some of their knowledge and experiences with their peers. And children can take turns to ask questions about their experiences, their culture, language or food. So Liz was saying that her personal connection, her connection to other places in the world is Portugal, because Portugal is where her parents have come from. So she has a connection to the Portuguese culture. Andrew has a connection to Scotland because his name is McMahon, so it's a Scottish name. Joel has a connection to Australia because he was born in Australia, so he called, because he's Australian. And Zach has a connection to Bali in Indonesia. Now his connection is that he has travelled to Bali with family holiday, and he also is learning Indonesian at school. And Zara has a connection to Hong Kong Disneyland. So her connection is a family holiday in Disneyland in Hong Kong. So then this opens up a lot of opportunities for children to discuss their connections to different parts of the world. So by using the world map, we can create a better vision of where we are located in respect to all other countries, and how we compare not only in size, but also resources, climate, landscape, living conditions, lifestyle, and of course culture. The map becomes a point of reference for the children to see the different connections from a personal level and local perspective, and also to a global level. This Engage activity should open up children's curiosity and also the opportunity to share their knowledge and experiences. Thank you.